Welcome back to my workshop. Now here we are on a cold Sunday morning in January, and obviously every man's thoughts turn to romance as Valentine's Day rapidly approaches. We all know it's difficult to know what to buy for our beloveds, so this year I've decided I'm going to make something. Nothing unusual in that, I make something most years, but we'll gloss over that bit. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to make some leather roses, and we're going to make a nice little heart-shaped basket to put them all in. So we're going to start with the basket, and I've got myself a little piece of red leather. This is red saddlery leather. It's a bit of an off-cut left over from a project I did a while back. You only need something about that sort of size. Now the first job we've got to do is to make ourselves a pattern. When I'm making a pattern for a sort of a commercial product, the first thing I do is I make it in paper, then I convert that onto a piece of plywood, so then I've got a nice solid thing to draw around. In this instance, I'm only ever going to make this once, so I don't need to worry about the plywood pattern. So, start off by folding it at an angle of 45 degrees, and what I'm then going to do is do a little bit of a circle across the top there. I think I may cheat ever so slightly, and now I need to find myself something round. So as you can see, now we have our triangle piece, and I'm using a polystyrene cup just to get the curve, and then we'll cut that out. And then when we open it up, as you can see, we have a lovely heart shape. We now need to transfer that onto the back of our piece of leather. So now we've got it marked on, all we've got to do is cut it out. So now we've got to cut out this bit here. Now you can do this with a pair of scissors, but it's got to be a fairly good pair of scissors to coat with leather, or you can do it with a saddler's knife if you're confident with using it. And all you do is you ever so gently follow the line round, do little tiny cuts, don't try and go too fast. And there you are. There's our first red heart. That's not bad actually, is it? So all we've got to do now is make a matching one. So now the moment of truth is, does this one match that one? And I'll tell you what, that's pretty good. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sewing along these two sides, and then this will open out like that. Our flowers will go inside, but I want to put a little handle just across there. So that's the bit we're going to assemble first. We could make ourselves a nice sort of simple strap handle that just went like that, bit of plain leather, but this is a Valentine's Day bag. We've got to do something a bit special. So I'm going to start off by using this piece of leather here. I'm going to cut a little piece of a strap. Right, so this is what we're going to work with. It's 40 millimeters wide by 240 millimeters. So that's going to be our strap. And we could sew it on like that. I mean, we might want to point that bit there. But that's not very exciting really, is it? So, starting on the back, and you always make sure you work from the back, I'm going to come up 50 mil on both sides. And I'm just going to quickly draw a line across. And then coming in 10 millimeters from each side. So I just want to quickly cut that bit out. Oh, this is going to be a fancy handle. I did contemplate plaiting it, but I thought that might have been a bit too fancy. And so we end up with that sort of shape. I'm now going to use a pair of dividers, which I'm going to make that they're just the width of our piece of leather. So then we start like that, and then I just want to scribe an arc. And then once again, using the saddler's knife, I'll follow the line that I've scribed. So it's starting to look a little bit fancier, and what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take that corner off as well. And then again, using the saddler's knife, I'm going to take that round there like that. And you can see that's what we've ended up with. Then that will then sews on top of our leather bag like that. So whilst you weren't watching on all the pieces of leather, I've just run a little bit of edge stain around the edges and I've given them a polish. If you haven't seen that done before, just have a look at some of my other videos. I'm now going to run a crease down the edges, and what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do some stitch marking on the bits that need to be stitched. So using our set of dividers, we're just going to quickly run that down there, and I'm going to do that on one piece. We'll now do exactly the same to the handle. Again, we'll run a crease around it, we'll stitch mark these bits here, and then that'll be ready to be sewn together. So having marked up all our stitches, now it's time to assemble it, ready for stitching. And I'm using these tiny little upholstery pins. That holds it all together as we start to sew it. Now for this, I'm using a special red thread. Red thread is quite unusual. This is not my usual stuff. It's a polyester thread rather than linen thread, and this one comes pre-waxed, which is quite interesting. I've used it a couple of times now and I quite like it. I did contemplate using black thread because after all it is Valentine's Day, and as every lingerie salesperson will tell you, black and red is that wonderful combination that men like to have, especially for Valentine's Day, but apparently doesn't sell the rest of the year. I can't understand it. So all we're going to do now is sew it together. So there you are, that's our two straps sewn onto the ends, and we can now put these two bits together and you can start to see what we're aiming for. If you're finding this interesting, do make sure you have a look at some of the other videos on my channel, or better still, sign up for the blog, find out some of the other projects I'm up to. There's usually something a bit unusual on there. Do feel free to send me an email, and you can get the email address by looking at the website heritagecraft.co.uk. Now when you reach the end, you just sew back one stitch. If this was a bag that was going to be taking lots of weight, I'd sew back a few stitches, but this is really never going to take anything very heavy. So back one stitch, And then we'll just cut the thread off. And there you are, that's our completed bag. I think that's rather good. And if you wanted to, you could stop at this point. And I'm sure if you gave that to the lady in your life, she'd probably think you've done fairly well and probably would keep you around for another year. You're probably worth it. But we're going to take it a step further. So we'll now put the bag to one side, and now we'll make the flowers to go in it. So here we are, ready to start making ourselves some roses. I've got myself some pieces of brown suede here, so it's much thinner than I would normally use. And I've cut it into pieces 150mm long, and this is about 20mm wide. And I'm just going to fold it in half like that. And I'm going to quickly run a line of stitches up one edge and just down that, so I make a little bit of a sleeve. And that will be the stem of our rose. So it's back to my usual linen thread, because for this I'm going to use a brown thread. And so first of all, you have to quickly run it through a block of beeswax. This helps to lubricate and seal the thread. Now I'm using a much longer piece of thread than I would perhaps normally need to use in order to sew something so small. I've automatically used a double-ended piece of thread because I shall use my usual saddle stitch on this. There's no reason why you can't put this through a sewing machine if you know how to work a sewing machine, or just run a single thread along, but this is just the way that I work. Now I'm just going to slide this little bit of steel rod down the middle of it just to strengthen it. I want to stiffen this up a little bit. I just happen to have bits of 3mm steel rod lying around the place. You can use whatever you can get your hands on. I'm sure a wooden skewer would work perfectly well. We just want something that stiffens that up ever so slightly, and of course the beauty of using steel is if you wanted to, you could bend it. So that becomes the stem of our flower. So all we've got to do now is to make the petals. Now for this, I'm going to use some red suede. It's very thin, it's probably less than 1 millimetre in thickness. And once again, I'm going to make myself a paper pattern. So that becomes our leaf pattern. So using our bits of red suede, marking on the back, I need to draw and then cut out of here 3 lots of 3 petals, because each flower is going to have 9 petals. And then once you've marked it all out, then you can cut this out. Because you're only using suede, you can cut this out very easily with a pair of scissors. So that's our petals cut out. The last set of 3 I've made slightly bigger because they're going to go on the outside. So now we make a hole roughly in the centre, and we need to probably make that hole slightly bigger than that, because that needs to be able to slide up the stem. You'll notice on the suede there's a nice side and a fresh side, so you want to make sure you have the fresh side on the inside, and you slide it up from the bottom until you've got about 6 or 8 mil at the top protruding. Now, I didn't cut off the threads that I did earlier, so I'm now just going to quickly push those one either side. So effectively I'm sewing the petals onto the top just to stop them coming off. Nobody's really going to be pulling them. So then you start in the middle and you curl the rose petal round like that. you then get the next one, and that curls around that one. And the third one curls around there, like so. Because if you look at the centre of a rose, there's lots of, it's all curled petals. And then what I do, just to hold that in place, wind that round like that, and I'm going to quickly tie it, and that will hold that in place while we put the next petal on. But you can start to see we're getting something which is starting to look like a rose. So there you are, that's the finished rose. So reaching for our basket, that can now go in there like that, and I can see I probably want to do the next couple slightly shorter. But once I've got 3 or 4 more in there, that's going to look like a lovely basket of flowers. So there you go, that's the final project. We've got ourselves a nice heart-shaped little basket with 4 roses sitting in the top. I'm sure the lady in your life will be very impressed if you were to make that for her. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have a look at some of the other ones. You never know, you might enjoy those too. And do remember to sign up for the blog at Heritage. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.